Hello everyone, welcome to video number 3 of the APUSH Ultimate Review. Today's video we will be talking about period 3, which spans from 1754 to 1800. Make sure to subscribe to the channel as I will be making an ultimate review for every single period. As a student who got a 5 last year on APUSH, I wanted to make these slides to help you guys, and let's get to it. Hope you guys enjoy. Alright, so the big ideas of period 3 are the French and Indian War, the Revolution of 1800, which is the peaceful transfer of power between political parties, the end of British colonial rule slash the American Revolution, the creating of a new government, the Constitution and federalism, political parties emerge, Federalists versus Democratic Republicans, debates over foreign policy, national power, and rights. Alright, so the French and Indian War. So some of the causes of the French and Indian War is the conflict over the Ohio River Valley between British and French, and this is part of the larger global 7 Years' War. So some of the key events are the Albany Plan of Union, which was made by Ben Franklin, and it was an attempt at colonial unity, but it was rejected in the end. But this is very important because it shows signs of early unity among the colonies. So the British win the French and Indian War with the Treaty of Paris, 1763, and the British gain all of the French land east of Mississippi, Spanish Florida. France loses most of American territory. So the effects of this, this eventually ends the salutary neglect, and it leads Britain to be in a lot of debt, which kind of prompts them to tax the colonists. So the tensions rise when it comes to the Proclamation of 1763, and it's basically banning the colonists from expanding westward. So road to revolution, British acts and colonial resistance. The Sugar Act and the Stamp Act were the first taxes, and this led to the colonists saying no taxation without representation. The Declaratory Act of 1766. This basically said that the parliament can legislate every single law. Like in all cases, it doesn't matter, they can declare anything. The Townshend Acts, these were basically taxes on imports, which led to the Boston Massacre and Boston Tea Party. The Intolerable Acts was a result of the Boston Tea Party, and it basically punished the colonists. So the first Continental Congress meets. So this is basically a boycott on British goods. It leads to the creation of Sons of Liberty, which help enact boycotts and rebellion. The Daughters of Liberty, they basically help the colonists make their own clothes rather than purchasing from the British. So the colonial ideas of rebellion and all that, they came from the Enlightenment, which happened in Europe. So John Locke and Montesquieu, they basically brought the ideas of natural rights and consent of the governed to the Americas, and this kind of created a major shift in the way of thinking among all the colonists. So the American Revolutionary War and Independence. So the main route to independence was through Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and this called for independence in words that were very easy for colonists to understand. So the Second Continental Congress happened, and it led to the Declaration of Independence by Jefferson, and it laid out the plans for war. The Battle of Lexington and Concord. So these were the first shots of the war, and then you have the Battle of Saratoga. So the colonists actually beat Britain, and this resulted in the French allying themselves with them, and this resulted in a colonist victory. The Battle of Yorktown was the official British surrender, and there's multiple reasons for the victory, but I'll just go through them. So there's better leadership under George Washington. There was the home field advantage in the Americas, the French alliance, and overwhelming of British supplies. So the Treaty of Paris of 1783, this led to U.S. independence and territory until Mississippi River. So this is very, very important. So then you have the Articles of Confederation. So this was the first constitution of new independent USA. So the strengths were the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. This led to orderly expansion into the West and banned slavery in the Northwest Territory, and a negotiated peace with Britain. However, the Articles of Confederation were actually really, really bad. So they have so much weaknesses, but which greatly outweigh the strengths. So that's what you guys have to remember. The Articles were not a good thing for this new country. So you have a weak central government. It had no ability to tax, it couldn't regulate trade, or it couldn't enforce laws. There was no president or executive branch, and there was no judicial branch. And then, like, the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation was really shown in Shays' Rebellion because it exposed the inability of the government to handle economic crisis, and it called for a stronger central government. So the Constitution and ratification. So the Constitutional Convention. Its goal was to revise the Articles and create a new constitution. So in this convention, a lot of compromises were made. Firstly, there was a Great Compromise, which called for a bicameral legislature. It merged the House by population and the Senate was equal votes. So in the House, the House of Representatives, each state, depending on their population, gets a certain amount of votes. But in the Senate, each state gets 2 votes. So that's basically what it was. And then you have the 3/5 compromise, which counted enslaved people for taxation and representation. So basically, 3/5 of the slaves were counted toward the population in the House of Representatives. And then you have federalism, which is the division of power between the federal and state governments. You have the separation of powers and checks and balances. So ratification. The Federalists included Hamilton and Madison, and they supported a strong national government. And then you have the anti-federalists, like Patrick Henry, and they feared tyranny and wanted a Bill of Rights. So these Federalists, they created the Federalist Papers, which defended the Constitution. And eventually a Bill of Rights was added to protect individual liberties. So Washington's presidency. Some of the key policies were, there was the creation of the first cabinet, which included Jefferson, Hamilton, etc. You have the Judiciary Act of 1789, which established a court system. Then you had Hamilton's financial plan. So this was an assumption of state debts, national bank, excise tax, tariffs, and it sparked opposition, which led to the formation of political parties. And the key events during his presidency was the Whiskey Rebellion, which was crushed by federal forces, and it proved the new strength of the new government under Constitution, which is very different than Shays' Rebellion. So you see a change in the constitutions. Then you have the Neutrality Proclamation, and it's set to avoid European wars. There's also the Jays Treaty, which it eased the tension with Britain over impressment. So impressment was basically the Britain ships, they were seizing American colonists and American citizens, and they were taking them to be used in the British Navy. So America got really mad at that, and Washington basically sent John Jay to make this treaty. And then you have the Farewell Address. So this warned against political parties and permanent foreign alliances. So the rise of political parties. The Federalists, Hamilton and Adams, they wanted a strong central government, a loose constitution interpretation. They were pro-British in foreign affairs, and they supported merchants in urban areas like New England. The Democratic Republicans, Jefferson and Madison, they advocated for states' rights and a strict constitution interpretation. They were pro-French, and they got support from farmers, rural areas in the South/West. So there's a lot of political division. So it was sparked by Hamilton's financial plan and foreign policy disagreements. So John Adams' presidency, 1797 to 1801. So this is like the last thing in this period, and let's start with his foreign policy. So you have the XYZ affair. French demanded bribes, and it led to the outrage within US. You have the Quasi-Wars, undeclared naval war with France. Convention of 1800 ended it peacefully. Then you have domestic conflict. You have the Alien and Sedition Acts, targeted immigrants and critics. You have the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, and it was Jefferson and Madison arguing that states could nullify unconstitutional laws. and this showed tensions between national authority and states' rights. And the Revolution of 1800. So the election of Jefferson, and he beats Adam. It basically shows a peaceful transfer of power between both the parties. So this is a very big moment because it basically shows that this country can peacefully transfer power between both parties, and it like basically sets a precedent for the future. It's the first time in modern history a republic transitioned power without violence. So, it validated constitution and democracy. It marked a decline of the Federalist Party. And Jefferson said, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." And then, if you guys want to pause here and look through this vocab, I just put the most important stuff here. I think it'd be very helpful. So some of the key historical thinking skills. So basically, you guys just start thinking about these stuff because it'll be very important for your essays or your short answer questions in the future. You're gonna need to know comparison, causation, all of that. So if you guys want to pause and just go through this, I think it'd be very helpful. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for future APUSH content, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Bye.